In this part of our course, we'll create the next page of the restaurant catalogue. Create a new page. Let's start creating the first element, the map. Switch to Rectangle tool and draw a rectangle. We'll do this element using several techniques. We'll even use Photoshop. Let's start with Corel only. Switch to the Smudge tool. As you can see, the smudge brush options appeared in the property bar. Let's change the smudge brush size to 9mm and then press enter. Now, try to paint over the top edge of the rectangle. As you can see, this tool works like an eraser. It modifies our figure by changing its path. If you make a mistake, just press Ctrl and Z. Paint over the entire top edge of the rectangle. It requires a lot of patience, but the effect is pretty good. Let's now change the angle of the brush. Let's change it to 90 degrees and press enter. Paint over the right edge of the rectangle. As you can see, two sides are ready. So this is how the smudge brush tool works. As you can see, this tool modifies the path around the brush. We can also do this from the other side of the path. Paint over the left edge of the rectangle. Let's change the tilt back to 0 degrees. Edit the bottom edge of the rectangle. This technique requires some patience, but it is effective. Of course, we can just experiment with the smudge brush options to gain the best possible effect. Another thing we can do is to switch to the Shape tool and correct this new path. Switch to wireframe view. This way our work will be much easier. We can modify the path, add new nodes or delete existing ones. Let's delete these nodes. Let's make this corner normal again. Well, let's talk about the second way to create this figure. Press Shift and F4 and switch to Freehand tool. Click twice on the Freehand tool icon. Switch to Freehand Bezier tool section. As you can see, the Freehand smoothing option is set to 50%. Lower is the Freehand smoothing. The more accurate lines we create. Now, draw a path that looks like a torn piece of paper. Be careful not to release the mouse button. We can close this path by going to the starting point. This technique also requires some time. Well, the figure is ready. Let's change its fill colour. Well, we're still in the wireframe view. Switch to normal view. If your figure still doesn't have colour, click on the close curve icon. So we now know two ways in which we can create this figure. Place the first figure on the page and change its colour to grey. Let's now talk about the third way in which we can create a figure like this. Switch to the Rectangle tool and draw a rectangle. Zoom in on the new figure. Switch to Knife tool. It's the third icon from the top. Knife tool has two modes. Let's quickly analyse these two modes. Activate these two icons on the property bar. Move your cursor over the edge of the rectangle, hold the mouse button and draw a random line to the other end of the figure. Release the mouse button when you reach the right edge. Switch to Pick tool and try to move this cut apart. As you can see, we can't do that. It's because both these icons are active. First one is called Keep as one object and the other is called Auto Close on Cut. When the first option is active, we need to separate these cut parts before we can move them. Go to Arrange menu and click on Break Curve Apart. We can move these two parts separately. Switch to the knife tool and deactivate the Keep as One Object icon. Leave the other icon active. It will automatically close the cut on path. Move your cursor over the edge. Hold your mouse button and draw a jittery cut line. Release the mouse button when you reach the right edge. Switch to Pick tool and move this cut apart. As you can see, we don't need to break these two figures now. Let's now deactivate both these options. Select this figure and switch to Knife tool. Without any previous options, we can't cut by drawing a cut line. We cut only parts of the path. So the Knife tool works now as a Scissors tool. Switch to Pick tool and click on a side to deselect. Try to move the parts we've just cut. As you can see, we've cut only parts of the path. So when the Auto Close On Cut option is deactivated, the Knife tool works just as the Scissors tool in Illustrator. To delete these objects, switch to the Knife tool and activate the Auto Close On Cut option. Move your cursor over the left edge, hold the mouse button and draw the cut line. Release the mouse button when you reach the right side. Switch to Pick tool. Click on a side to deselect and move this figure. We'll now use this figure to cut the bottom of the rectangle. Move this figure to the bottom of the rectangle and mirror it. Select this bottom figure, hold Shift, select the rectangle and click on Trim icon. Move this figure over the right edge of the rectangle. Hold Ctrl and rotate it 90 degrees. You can also just change the value here. Place this figure over the right edge. Hold Shift and click on the rectangle and click on the Trim icon. Remember about this selection order. Move this figure to the left, mirror it, hold Shift, add the rectangle to the selection and click on the Trim icon. Now the figure is ready. Let's deactivate the Snap to Objects option. Go to View menu, then Snap to and click on Snap to Objects. Press Shift and F4. Upscale this figure a little bit. Hold Ctrl, drag the figure down, keep holding the left mouse button and press the right one at the same time. This way we've duplicated this figure and placed it at the bottom of the catalogue page. Let's say that this part is ready now. So we now know a couple of techniques in which we can create such a figure. Switch to the Rectangle tool and draw a slim rectangle. This figure will symbolise the street on a map. Move this figure over the rectangle and duplicate it 5 times. Most important for us is the position of the first and the last rectangle. We'll now distribute the rest of the figures between them. Select all 5 figures and go to Align and Distribute palette. Go to Distribute section and click on Distribute Right icon. As you can see, the figures were evenly distributed. Let's make them a little bit longer. Duplicate all these figures and rotate them 90 degrees angle. We don't really have to move them to the side. I did this only to show the effect. Position these figures over the big rectangle. As you can see, we've just created a grid constructed from 10mm rectangles. Let's now change the size of each of these rectangles. We don't have to be really accurate. This would be a real project. We would have to check the original map or find it on the internet. Let's say that our streets look like this. Duplicate this one rectangle, rotate it and place it right here. Well, the streets are almost ready. Select all the figures. We don't want to have the grey figure in this section. Don't worry, we can exclude it from the selection. Hold Shift and click on the grey figure. Let's now check if we have only the slim rectangle selected. Click on the yellow colour. As you can see, only the slim rectangles change the colour. Click on the weld icon, zoom in on the figure, switch to the Shape tool and select these nodes. Press Delete to delete them. Select a couple of nodes right here and click on Convert to Curve. Modify the line segments and change the position of some of the nodes. Well, we need to correct this little corner. Zoom in on it and switch to wireframe view. This way we'll see all of the nodes we want to correct. Select this node, hold Ctrl and move it to the left. Now delete the node. This part is ready. Press Shift and F4 and switch back to normal view. Move the street figure to the side. We'll now place the yellow figure inside the grey figure. We've done it before, but only with photos. This way we won't destroy both figures by merging them together. Go to Effects, then Power Clip, and click on Place Inside Frame. Click on the big rectangle. Click on the figure with the right mouse button and select Edit Power Clip option. We can now correct the position of the yellow figure inside the power clip frame. Switch to Rectangle tool and draw two rectangles over this huge yellow part. Remember that we're still working inside the power clip frame. Select all the figures. Now we'll combine them. Combine merges figures together and cuts the overlapping part. Click on the Combine icon. To exit this mode, click on the icon placed under the figure. We'll now try to trim this project. Although the figure is inside, we don't have to worry. We'll edit only the frame. The figure placed inside won't be affected. Before we move on, let's change the nudge distance to 1mm. Select all figures placed on the page and click on the trim icon. These two white rectangles trim the bottom power clip frame. Select the top right white rectangle, press the up arrow key and the right arrow key. Select the bottom one and press the down arrow key and the right arrow key. So we trimmed the power clip frame and moved the white rectangles away from it. Select the power clip frame, click on it with the right mouse button and select Edit Power Clip option. We'll now create an arrow figure. This time we'll use a ready-made figure available in CorelDraw. Switch to Arrow Shapes and draw an arrow. Zoom in on the figure. If we want to modify this arrow, we need to drag this red point. Remember that we can do this only with the Arrow Shapes tool. When we convert this figure into curves, we can switch the Shape tool and modify the path as we like. So the arrow figure is now ready. Switch back to normal view. Press Shift and F4. Select this figure and change its colour to red. Since we're inside the power clip frame, we don't need to trim the figure. It will clip by the frame. Move it right here and rotate it. This arrow points at the place where the restaurant is. Let's now talk about how we can create an arrow in a slightly different way. Switch to the 2-point line tool. Hold Ctrl and draw a line. Change the outline weight to 8 points. This way the effect will be much more visible. All outline options can be accessed through the Outline Pen tool. In the arrow section we can choose the ending of the outline we've just created. The same options are available on the property bar. Select a random arrow from the starting point. Let's choose the fletching. Of course, we can just leave it like it is. Let's choose some fletching. Click OK to accept the changes. As you can see, the outline changed into an arrow. Although we can't see it in normal mode, this is still just a normal line. Switch to wireframe view. You can now see the path structure clearly. Let's now convert the outline to a path. Go to Arrange menu and click on Convert Outline to Object. As you can see, the outline was converted into a normal path. Switch back to normal view. Now we just need to change the fill colour and the arrow is ready. So we can create an arrow figure from an outline. Let's move on. Exit the power clip editing mode. Switch to Rectangle tool and draw a rectangle inside the first white jittery figure. We'll use this new figure to clip the photo. Hold Shift and add the jittery figure to the selection. Access the Align and Distribute figure and align both figures vertically and horizontally. Duplicate this figure and place it over the bottom jittery rectangle. Hold Shift, add the bottom rectangle to the selection. Go to Align and Distribute palette and align both figures. Close the Align and Distribute palette. So this element is now ready. Switch to Text tool and draw a text frame between the second and third guidelines. Let's now import some random text here. Switch to the Pick tool and change the text size to 10 points. 1 point is the same as 0.35 millimeters. Zoom in on the text. Duplicate this text and place it at the bottom of the page. Go to File menu and click on Import. Hold Ctrl and select the two random photos. Now click on the Import button. Place the photos inside a document. Select the first photo, go to Effects menu, then Power Clip and click on Place Inside Frame. Click on the top rectangle. Now do the same thing for the second. We'll now create a background for the whole page. Click twice on the Rectangle tool. This will create a rectangle which is as big as the page. Change the fill of the colour of the rectangle. Select the first jittery rectangle and change its fill colour to white. Do the same with the bottom one. Let's now upscale this power clip. To make it stay where it is, we need to hold Shift while upscaling. Zoom in on the project. Hold Shift and upscale the power clip frame. Select it, change the width to 75 mm and press Enter. Press Shift and F4 to fit the page on the screen. Switch to Pick tool. Select the text and change its colour to white. Remember that when you're working with the Pick tool, you can change the colour for all the text in the document. Let's now learn how to create a jittery rectangle figure in Photoshop. Well, I like to use both Corel and Photoshop when I create these projects. Some things in Photoshop just can't be done in Corel. Switch to Photoshop, go to File menu and click on New. Switch the units to centimeters, change the width and the height of the new document to 10 centimeters. Change the resolution to 300 dpi, the standard printing resolution. So when we switch to inches, a document size is 3.937 by 3.397 inches. Of course, we can choose any units we like. Switch back to centimeters and click on OK. Switch to Rectangular Marquee tool and draw a selection inside a document. So we've created a simple rectangular selection using the Rectangular Marquee tool. We'll now fill this section with colour. Change the foreground colour to green. Go to Edit menu and click on Fill. Expand the Use drop-down list. Choose the foreground colour and click OK. Go to Select menu and click on Deselect. We'll now apply a filter which will distort the edges of the green rectangle. Go to Filter menu, then Pixelate and click on Crystallize. Scroll the preview to see one of the rectangle edges. Let's now change the cell size. Just play with this scroll bar and observe how the figure changes. Well, let's set it to 24 and click OK. Let's now learn how we can convert this into a vector graphic. First, activate the Layers palette. Go to Windows menu and click on Layers. This palette contains 3 sections: Layers, Channels and Paths. Switch to the Paths tab. Switch to Magic Wand tool and click on the green colour. Just created a selection that shapes just as this rectangle. We'll now convert this section into a path and export it. Go to the Paths palette. Access the palette menu and click on Make Work Path. Leave the tolerance at default and click OK. As you can see, a work path was created. Click twice on this path to save it. Leave the name as default and click OK. Go to File menu, then Export and click on Paths to Illustrator. From this drop-down list we can choose the path we want to export. Select Path 1 and click OK. change the file name to Path1 and click on Save. Now switch to Corel. Go to File menu and click on Import. Select the Path1 file and press Enter. Click once on an empty space to import this file into the document. The path is now in our document. Let's change its fill colour to red. Go to Arrange menu and click on Ungroup. Sometimes the path is created with a white background. So now we have a figure which was created in Photoshop, converted to a vector graphic and imported into CorelDraw.